when I was asked to record a tribute video for Curt, I knew that he would be very upset with me if I didn't do it using a proper microphone and headphones. So don't worry, Curt, the audio is clean.
I'm not really sure how to start these, so I'm just gonna kind of start talking.
It's hard to find the words to talk about a man whose entire life was about telling stories. I mean, nothing really feels like it would be good enough or feels like it would be true enough to talk about Curt.
We got to create some wonderful memories together, and those have been life-changing experiences for me.
And I had the great honor and privilege of knowing Curt as a mentor, as a professor, and also as the faculty member that walked me down the aisle at commencement.
I think if there's one journalism professor who can single-handedly have an impact across the entire community of journalism students that go to Penn State, it was Curt.
So much can be said about Curt Chandler, the educator, the colleague, the editor, the mentor, the friend.
If we're handing out awards for best blank, Curt Chandler would win best photographer, best dad, best professor, best mentor, best teacher, best laugh. And the list goes on and on and on.
But what I am reflecting on now in this very sad time is not that my memories are in paper form. You know, this is the recognition of being college marshal and choosing Curt as my faculty escort, but it's in those memories, in that dedication, that commitment, and that passion that Curt instilled in all of his students and alumni.
He saw the gifts in us, and he did everything in his power to bring those gifts out of us and to give us the skill set and teach us the skill set that we needed to be successful storytellers in the multimedia journalism world.
His lessons, big and small and quirky and practical, have endured in and out of the classroom and the workplace for so many of us, such as the obscure but useful idea of an educator always having a headphone splitter taped to their headphones, so that a student can plug in while working together to perfect a piece of audio or video, all in the interest of telling a better story.
So many people who got to know Curt outside of class, whether it be through another class like 481, or, you know, I was fortunate enough to get to go to Puerto Rico with him, or, you know, him helping me start the video staff at the Daily Collegian. You know, he'd never say no to people. He'd never not offer to help somebody that he knew he could help.
Curt was always there for me. He was always reliable. You could always lean on him. And he always gave his time generously, whether it was meeting me at a gas station on I-99 in July of 2019, midsummer under scorching heat, for me to return camera equipment.
My very first week of college, I went to the Grange Fair with Pearl Gluck and Curt, and the two of them started a pierogi documentary, and that kind of blew my mind. I've seen how much his support matters to both students that are, you know, in school now, but also to students who had him 16 years ago.
My relationship with Curt lasted much longer after college than it did during my time at Penn State, and you know, I think that really speaks to the care that he had for all of us.
One of my favorite stories about you is when you asked me to meet you on campus about a month after Xander was born, and you delivered a handful of the Critters books, and I would read them to Xander. And now Xander is reading them all on his own.
Sometimes I remember, and sometimes I just forgot.
We love you.
Hey Curt, I know I was never one of your students at Penn State, but that doesn't mean I didn't learn a lot from you. Specifically how to treat the students with respect and make them feel like they're professionals in the classroom. That was a great inspiration for me.
It's something that I take with me every time I teach when I'm tired and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I always think about like, well, Curt would do this.
And I am so grateful, lucky, and thankful to have you as a teacher.
Thank you so much for always being someone I could turn to for advice and bounce project ideas off of. and for taking me up on my harebrained desire to learn Adobe Flash and make it an independent study. I'll never forget how we would spend an entire class learning some ActionScript only to have it not work because the book was always out of date.
But the first time we ever actually met was during the short doc workshop, and it took us until 7 a.m. to edit a 1-minute video I made. He didn't really know who I was at the time. He didn't even really know my name. All he knew was that I was always the girl who sat in the front row of his classroom. And that was enough justification for him to help me.
Every time I talked to him, I was just so impressed by his energy. He was never standing still. He was never convinced that he knew it all. He was always learning really just as much as his students were. He was always on top of changes in the industry, and he was always the first person to try something new.
We got to go to Hong Kong and report on various different stories. Curt was always so patient with us in the planning stages, finding sources there. Once we got to Hong Kong, he was documenting the trip from behind his camera, making sure we all had our own memories to make.
And when 4 or 5 of us were having a hard time with staying out there as long as we were because our feet were cold, Curt actually offered us the socks and the gloves off of the floorboard of his car.
Learning from him in the classroom and then out in the field at the 2016 Paralympic Games in Rio is something that I'm so grateful for even now. And looking back, I don't think I fully appreciated how lucky I was to have learned from him in those situations.
And that was Curt. In my head, I was knocking on his door, asking to borrow salt, and he welcomed me into his kitchen and taught me how to make soup.
I've been out all day covering the elections around Center County for John Beal's advanced photojournalism class. I was back in the basement of Carnegie with my classmates. Curt was there helping us go through our photos. We had the screen up. And when CNN called the election for Obama, we heard this roar go up around campus. And Curt and John were like, grab your cameras, get out the door. The news is happening. We gotta get this. And they really made us feel like true photojournalists that night.
You know, we were just talking very loudly and casually about our love and adoration for Curt Chandler. And in the stands, someone heard us and was like, are you talking about Curt Chandler? We were like, yeah, we love Curt Chandler. And she was like, that's my dad. You're like, no way, Curt Chandler's your dad? You're so lucky. We're like, no way. And so we just expressed how much we appreciated and cared for him to her.
He introduced me and Grace to the Online News Association and encouraged us to apply for the student newsroom there. Then after we were accepted, he drove us hundreds of miles and several hours down to Washington, D.C. and back, even if we got a little lost on the way home.
I think the first day he came downstairs, and I was a little unsure about what I was getting myself into, and he comes downstairs with like a little roller suitcase, a bag on his shoulder, and like 3 cameras around his neck, and he's like, let's go. And I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And I think I even panicked a little bit about having 2 to 3 hours at a time in a car with a professor that I had to talk to the entire time. So I made notes on my phone of things I could talk to him about, which is also just absolutely ridiculous if you know Curt, because he could just talk your ear off about anything and everything. And he did. I learned so much about his life, his career, you know, whatever. Like, the man has a story for everything.
He'd go off and tell these great stories, not because he wanted to brag about himself, but he did it because he wanted to inspire other people and wanted them to learn from him. And it just shows in the massive outpouring that you've seen on social media. Curt was more than a professor. He was more than a man. He was somebody that inspired a lot of people.
One of the things, though, that I think was most profound about Curt Chandler, though, is he didn't just want students to tell the best story that would make the best news or to win the best award, the greatest award. He wanted us to each tell the story that was best for us to tell. And that meant what we brought to this story, our voice.
Most of Curt's students would joke that he had at some point told them that they could use his name or that they could drop his name. And as a student, it was so reassuring to know that somebody believed in you so much. I think Curt believed in his students sometimes more than they believed in themselves. And I think that that was the confidence. And
he helped me with loads of projects, not just for his classes, but for a bunch of other ones as well. And when I was named the student marshal for my college, he was the first person I thought of to be the faculty escort.
You know, Curt is the reason that I felt confident enough to start my own production company, and he has helped me every step of the way. Even after I graduated, he has offered me so much advice, and I'm just so grateful for the role that he's played in my life.
We were always just talking about Curt Chandler. It was almost like it was a thing. We were like, what would Curt Chandler do? WWCCD, you know.
He was so about his students that he would joke around before class, and he would answer the chats and, you know, just make jokes and be more than willing to be personable and be himself in a classroom. And as a student, that's all you can want, as a professor that cares more about you than he does getting a paycheck or anything else. Curt was honestly the man. That's the best way to describe him. The man wore a unicorn onesie to our one class because he wanted to inspire people and make people laugh and just have a good time.
I will always, always, always remember his laugh and his entire body shaking with laughter. Because he did everything, just like his laugh was wholehearted, his whole life was wholehearted.
When I had an independent study with you and Mandy Hoffmackel, I didn't realize that the impact you had on us was also the impact you had on, I guess, hundreds of other Penn State students.
Along the way, I realized that what Curt gave me, what he did for me, he did for everybody who crossed paths with him. And I want to think that because of that, we each get to keep a little piece of Curt with us.
Stories don't really end. The stories we tell never end, and the people in them never end. It's what keeps them going. What's what keeps them alive. And I think with Curt, his story is going to keep on being told by the students that he inspired so much.
He truly is one of a kind. His passion, his love for his students, it's so tangible, and we all felt it in every way. And I think I speak on behalf of myself and everybody else at Penn State who had the pleasure of knowing him, that we'll never forget the things he taught us, and that his legacy will live on forever. And I know all of us will make sure of that.
He'll continue to live on. And I'm just grateful to be one of the many hundreds, if not thousands, of people that have been directly impacted by Curt. I love you, Curt.
He will truly be missed, and I know we're all better professionals and journalists because of the lessons that we learned. Curt, we'll miss you, and thank you so much.
I hope and know that Curt's legacy will live on through the storytelling skills that he has taught so many others.
I will forever be indebted to Curt, and he will be so, so missed by all of us. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everything, Curt Chandler.
Thank you, Curt, for all that you did, and I'm sending my best wishes to everyone mourning him.
Very special man. Very grateful to have known him. Thanks.
And thank you so much for being a part of our wedding. Having you and Stacy there was so important. We think back on that all the time.
I love you for that, and thank you for making me an amazing teacher, or at least I strive to be. Anything 10% like Curt is good for me.
We will always miss you, Curt. But so many of us are so proud to have said that we knew you. Thank you. And we're all better people as a result of learning from you.
Really, I just think it's fitting that a man who taught so many of us how to tell better stories has left so many of us with so many great memories and stories to pass on about him. Curt was an incredible member of this community, and I'll miss him, and I know that everyone else misses him too.
And pass condolences onto his family and friends and all those who are grieving this time. It is a great loss to the community, but a great legacy that will live on. Thank you.
And I want to send my love and hugs to you and your family. So thank you, Curt.
I feel really grateful that I got to know him as a person and stayed in touch with him all these years. And I want to echo Jill Knight's sentiments by thanking the whole Chandler clan for sharing him with us. He was truly such a special person, and I really miss him.
I don't think there's anyone else who tells stories better than he does, whether it be for a professional sense or in a life sense.
because I had, there's all this stuff I wanted to do. There's all this stuff I still want to do, and it's just not going to happen. I wanted to travel with my wife. I wanted to do some study abroad with students.
Yeah.
I have some student projects that are really interesting. I want to spend way more time with my kids, and that just doesn't. I just have to pick and choose now. There's some things I can change, and there's some things I can't.
Yeah.
And the things that I can't change, I'm just not going to sweat it.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Kevin Hagopian. I'm a friend and colleague of Curt's, and I'd like to give just an informal welcome. Dean Marie Harden will be with you shortly to give more formal remarks, but to family, to friends, to colleagues, to all those watching online, to everybody who is a friend of Curt, welcome. Sunday would have been Curt's 65th birthday, and we know what he would like us to do if he were here, and that's to celebrate, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. I'd like to offer some thanks to everybody who pitched in to help make this event happen. And by the way, as I'm looking out, I was talking to Curt's great friend and colleague from the Post-Gazette and from here at Penn State, John Beal, and John said he had gotten calls from people all over the Northeast who were former students of Curt's, who were upset that they were on their way here and the weather had turned them around. So Curt still got a full house. Again, some thanks first to my great friend and colleague, Katie O'Toole, who's really organized this entire event. To Yutai Chung and his tech support staff in our IT department. To Russ Eshelman, Curt's department head and longtime friend, Karen Mosley-Bryan of our facilities department and her staff, and certainly Ashley Hardison, our college's events planner, who's worked so hard to make this event happen for all of us. And finally, much of the video that you'll be seeing today, including that first montage, was done by a Penn State student, Matt Farrell. And I think it says something about our college in general, that we're able to count on our students at times like this. And so Matt, I'm especially proud to be associated with you today. As I said, we're here to celebrate Curt, and that means telling stories. So here's my short story. Once upon a time, my great friend Madeline Chandler, who, as she said, took about 18 of your courses, Kevin, had signed up for my COM 454 course, the documentary studies course. And I was looking forward, as always, to having Madeline in my class as a smart person and as a foil to my bad jokes. And so Curt appeared at my door, as he was wont to do, and said, would it bother you if I was in the class too? And other than the fact that Curt knew so much more about documentary than me, I said no. And then I said, is that legal? Can a father and a daughter be in the same class? And Curt thought a minute and he said, I know, we'll do it first and ask permission later. So that's my Curt Chandler story. And I'd like to welcome now the Dean of the Donald P. Bellisario College of Communications, Dr. Marie Harden. Dr. Harden?
Well, thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon to everyone. As I stand at the front of this room, I'm looking out from a place that was often occupied by Curt Chandler. The seats in front of him filled with students, and the screen behind him lit up with a multimedia project designed to spark curiosity and discovery. Now, knowing Curt, I can't help but imagine this room during those classes transformed into a kind of magic carpet for the creative journey to which he invited every student to join him with a joy and enthusiasm that was absolutely contagious. And he invited every student. None was left behind. The work he did in this room was just part of the magic of Curt Chandler. I'm honored to be with all of you to celebrate that magic, because I know that each of you here today and on our live stream is here because he touched your life in a way that will always, always be with you. And each of you brings your memories, unique and individual to you, yet reflective of Curt's singular, powerful impact on us collectively to approach family, work, and life as he did, with a sense of optimism and adventure. And to approach the journey of discovery and learning and growth and service, the context in which many of us knew Curt, as he did. Thank you for the observations you've shared in recent weeks as they help fill out our understanding of his legacy. You know, I was just talking with a student yesterday who described Curt as the reason he's here at Penn State. Curt as cheerleader, as mentor, as a valued critic of the student's work, and as a coach for life and career. You know, Curt attracted this student and all students through his genuine interest in them and his ability to see their potential and then gently but firmly demand that they meet it. My friend and colleague, Kevin Hagopian, characterized it beautifully in a recent email when he wrote, "You've heard of steel magnolias, of course. Curt was an iron teddy bear." We are all better because of him, and we know it. That's the reason we're here as a community today. I want to give my special thanks to Curt's family, his greatest legacy, for sharing him with the Bellisario community and for being here today with faculty, staff, and students. Here on the front rows are Stacy Chandler, his wife and partner of 42 years, and as much a part of the Bellisario community as any of us. And their children, their son Toby Chandler with Kate Ekman, their daughter Molly Chandler Camp, their son Vincent Chandler, and their daughter Madeline Chandler. Curt's mother-in-law, Dorothy Paulson, is also here. I want to welcome others who traveled here to be with us, his friends, Bob and Millie Lynn, fraternity brothers, Jim and Joe Young, and a contingent of colleagues from Kent State, Sue Kirkman and Bruce Zake, Kevin and Rosario Dilly, and Thor Wasbatten, a former faculty member in the Bellisario College. We're grateful you're here with us, along with all of those across the U.S. and around the globe on our live stream. There's no way in a single program that we can capture Curt's legacy, but we're giving it the Bellisario College try. Today, you're going to hear from his family, students, colleagues, and alumni, starting with his daughter, Madeline. Madeline?
There we go. Hi, everybody. So, trying to come up with a speech today, and I was, figuring it out, and I was actually going to draw on a couple of those things, such as students behind me talking about my dad at a sporting event, because that was weird. Or the fact that there were definitely more drinks bought for me in college by people just being like, "Oh my God, you're Curt's daughter? Let me get you a beer," than any other reason. Was thinking about talking about like the ethics of, we took Hagopian out to dinner after every class those Thursdays. Was that okay? We're unclear. And then even a few of the people who were student marshals, person who was class of 2014, I was 30 minutes late to that one. I also graduated that day because I drank a lot the night before because I'm a Penn Stater. So, you know, was thinking about a lot of things like that. And then I was like, you want to know what? When I talk to everybody has come up with some really great things about my dad recently. And it's been unbelievably wonderful to read and listen to all the stories of my dad's kindness, his patience, and his unending desire to help his students. These are all true and they're all special things about my dad, but they aren't the end-all be-all to him. It's been fascinating to talk to people about him, and I recently found out that a lot of people didn't know that my dad was an avid canoeer, as you saw in that picture. This is literally how I picture my dad most of the time. We talk about him in his safari vests and cameras and stuff, but a canoe would always also be involved in that in my memory. And for all of you film lovers out there, which I personally know is a lot of you, it should be noted that his canoe is named Rosebud. So Citizen Kane was ruined for me as a 2-year-old, in case you were wondering. In the world of water adventures, this Eagle Scout was also my assistant troop leader for my Girl Scout troop, who once exclaimed to me with glee that one of his favorite memories with me was when he took my troop whitewater rafting and just threw us out of the raft in between rapids because he got bored. Like, it's just, y'all know how to swim, this is fine. The man also slept in on all weekends, and he never wore pants when he came downstairs, much to my embarrassment. And all of my Emmas know what I'm talking about. He always cured me with his Kraft mac and cheese recipe, whether it's because I had a cold or I was writhing in pain from one of my many procedures. He would show up to me with slightly dry and always delicious mac and cheese. When we drove Toby up to college one year, he wouldn't let me listen to the Grease soundtrack. I was only 9, doing my best, because he hates Olivia Pukin-John, as he called her, so I just wasn't allowed to. My dad was the guy I asked to pick me up from school in middle school when I got into a fist fight, just because I knew that he'd be proud of me for winning. So and as all of you talk about how he was so patient with teaching people things, I chose my mother to teach me how to drive. And also we used to scream at each other as he ineffectively tutored me in math. So just so you guys all know, I think all of the patience was not around algebra. Photography, sure, but no. And I loved hearing all about how my dad was an educator and a storyteller, because he was those things. But specifically to me, my dad was a dad. Not just to me, but to so many people. For those of you who know me, I have adventured all across the world, and constantly, any of my friends who didn't have good relationships with their parents, I was like, oh, you have a great dad now. Like, my dad's your dad, that's fine. So my dad actually has children, all Africa and Poland and so many in Scotland. And I'm glad I got to share my dad with so many people, but I'm also glad that my dad was mine. And so I thank you all for being here, and we're going to continue celebrating Curt with a video that was put together by my brother Vincent, who is also a Penn State alum, and actually just took my dad's class instead of taking a class with him. So here we go. Thank you.
Stories about Curt's stories, or something.
Stories about Curt's stories, or something.
Imagine, not the actual story, but a tale about the person telling it. And deservedly, my dad was a killer storyteller. In his last months, my siblings and I relished the opportunity to hear a good one again in person. I made 2 trips back to Pennsylvania in August and November to sit and listen. We would spend hours looking through his photo archive and days more playing with his collection of cameras. Lucky for all of us, I took each and every one of the classes that Curt taught.
Oh, this is a story I really like. I like this. Let's see. Where does it start? This is my first camera. Came from a friend of the family. You know, my mom's an artist, so she encouraged me to just be creative with it. This is the camera that I took to Japan in 1973. I got this from the Boy Scouts. This is a Kodak. This is my first 35mm camera. The camera that my dad used, the medium format camera that Grammy used. The first picture that I shot for publication, I shot with that camera. The Argus is a terrible, but the most popular amateur camera of the 1950s. I've never made a frame with this. I've always owned a better camera than this, but I have one. I have a couple of 3D cameras. This opens up like this. I think this is a 2 1/4, 3 1/4. This is a Voigtlander, just consumer camera. My old tabletop tripod. So this would have been an Instamatic camera that actually shot sharp picture, as opposed to the Kodak Instamatics, which were made with plastic lenses and are just an atrocity. Yeah, they were terrible. All right, next box. This is a book I've never gone through. I've never seen this picture before. Stacy and Chris. This is me. These are pictures of me. So this is Grandma Dorsal with Billy and Bobby. So this is my grandma and grandpa. I'm not sure who that is. That's my dad. This is Uncle Joe, who's my mother's brother. This is Aunt Jean, who's his wife. She was a nurse. She's famous. My mother was choking one day, and Aunt Jean is 5'2", and she picked up my mother by her ankles and shook her until a piece of meat fell out.
Holy cow.
Yeah. My grandma Jakey. She was 5 feet tall. She was incredibly thrifty because she had been, she was an adult during the Depression. Drove my parents fucking crazy. They would pay for an airline ticket for her to fly out to Minnesota, and they would get a telegram that said, took the bus. And she would cash in the airline ticket and then take the bus and spend, like, she was 80. and she would spend 4 days taking the bus from Washington, D.C. to Cloquet, Minnesota, because it could save her $10. I think it was my mom was going to kill her. My dad just gave up.
If we asked all the former students and current students of Curt Chandler who had something nice or funny or warm to say about Curt, we would be here, I'm proud to say, for months and months and months. Instead, we've asked Sade Olasimbo if she would perhaps speak a little bit for all of Curt's students. Sade?
You go, girl. If anybody who knows me knows I really don't need this, but I'm doing it for the people on the live stream. So after someone leaves us, right, what do you remember about someone, right? It's how about they looked, a favorite memory, how they made you feel. There's a lot of things we could all share about Curt in those categories, but my favorite thing is his belly laugh. If you've ever heard it, as some of you probably know, you know what I mean. If you haven't, I'm going to do my best. That's No, I did not need claps for that. No, do not give me credit for that. It's a laugh that you can't help but join in on. It's one that fills the room and makes all your cares just melt away. And it's through that belly laugh that I want to share a couple of my favorite Curt memories. I was a part of the 2012 Rio de Janeiro International Reporting course, and Curt was one of the faculty advisors on that trip. And for me as a student, everything was going great until about 2 days before our departure, when my original story fell through. He was super supportive when I was in hysterics and helped me switch gears to a new story, which was about an art school in Rio. And turns out that I didn't quite get the full approval to be there, and I got kicked out. And while I was met with that same supportive Curt from the night before, I was first met with that belly laugh. But hey, I managed to get my footage, to get my story, and the next day I went to the public art school, and it's good, we're fine. Although, Tony, if you're watching, you gave me a B, and I'm a little upset by that, but it's fine, whatever. Few years later, I was added as alumni coach for the Short Doc Workshop in 2018, working along with some of our faculty, alumni, and our current students. Catching up with Curt during that weekend, he revealed to me that he liked to tell my kicked out of an art school in Rio story to his students.
at least once a semester in every single class. Cue belly laugh. I mean, my reaction wasn't as great as everyone else's is, right? But I understood why. It's a lesson, right? To always have a backup plan, always be prepared. So, you know, I mean, at the expense of my own mess, right? We can tell the story. But the final thing I'll share is that it happens to be a photo evidence of, thanks to Will Yerman, who's here, from Short Doc 2019, when Curt was over my shoulder, while we were both looking at my phone and laughing. He's delivering one of those belly laughs, and I'm joining in the same. And you would think, oh, are we watching a video? Or are we looking at a meme? No, in fact, we are troubleshooting with students via FaceTime, laughing in their faces. We eventually found a solution to their problem, and don't worry, we didn't scar them for life. They actually both have very great careers in journalism. But there's a reason why there's so many of us here in person, standing room only, and probably many of you who are watching on the live stream. And that's because Curt is one of those people who will always make you feel really good. Of course, he was a talented professional storyteller who could get you hooked and keep you hooked on a story. He's a professor who never left a student by the wayside, staying up late, answering emails, and extending his help way into their professional careers, myself included. And he was a man who loved his family, as we can clearly see from some of the evidence that we've seen today. And thank you all for sharing him with us. But yeah, he was just an all-around amazing dude. So to Stacy, Toby, Molly, Vince, Madeline, and the entire Chandler family, I know I don't speak for myself when I say that our love for Curt extends to you as well. We know that his passing leaves a hole in your hearts. It does in mine as well. And if it does for any of you, I challenge you to make Curt's legacy live on through every single one of us. Encourage that photographer that you see on the street to stick with the craft. Stay up past your bedtime to work with an idea with a colleague. Connect some folks to each other and see how their relationship grows after you've planted that seed. But most importantly, have a lot of belly laughs.
Thank you so much, Ade. As some of you know, here at Penn State, in the Bellisario College of Communications, we talk a lot about teaching among one another, among each other. It's a topic of endless interest and frustration to us. Curt was endlessly optimistic and upbeat and positive on the subject, and he made you want to emulate him. What you're about to see is the recording Curt made of for our web thing called Faculty in 90 Seconds, and I think it's as good a testament to teaching interest and excellence as you'll hear. So, Utah, if we could see that.
The best part of my job is I'm eager to go to work every day, and because it's fun. I mean, it's fun to tell stories. I teach multimedia reporting, so we get to play with all the fun toys. For multimedia reporting, I have a background in still photography, in video reporting, in audio. There's a moment when you're working with a student when you see that light bulb turn on, when they get it. Whether it's doing nonlinear video editing or whether it's learning what it takes to make a startup business successful as a journalist. You know, there's that moment, that aha moment when they figure out that, yeah, this is going to work, I get it, and off they go. I shoot stereo photographs. If you go back to the Civil War era, the way that people used to find out what things looked like was with stereo photography. It's a library. I can go there, I can study quietly. The biggest quality is just a passion for what they do. Journalism is something that you have to really care about telling stories well to be good at it. Be curious and never stop learning. Especially in journalism, which is constantly evolving. If you think, okay, I know how to do this, there's nothing more that I need to learn, you're just left in the dust by everybody else who's progressing faster than you.
Be curious and never stop learning. I think that's pretty much it right there. Michelle Bixby was also a student of Curt's, and I think you'll find her message especially compelling if you're wondering what next for the rest of us. Michelle?
I didn't think that was possible. So, wonderful.
Upright in his chair.
Sleeping nonetheless. Hello, everyone. I was one of the first students to take Curt's COM 481 class at Penn State in 2007. It was my senior year, and I was a full-time student working 4 jobs to support myself through college. Curt saw my struggle, but he also saw my potential and work ethic. He believed in me. That semester, without telling me, Curt entered my multimedia project for an award. I ugly cried when he told me I'd been awarded a monetary grant for the work I'd produced. In a time of financial uncertainty, I was offered respite because my teacher truly cared about my success. I was no exception to Curt's generosity. He was generous with his time, his knowledge, and his resources to every student who had the privilege of learning from him. Last week, Curt's incredible daughter, Maddie, was kind enough to give me insight on what inspired Curt to create the Chandler Grant for Storytelling Fund. She said that Curt had witnessed firsthand the college experiences and unique opportunities his own children missed because they had to financially support themselves through college. He felt that any student could succeed if they had more time to dedicate to their craft and access to the tools they need. The solution? A financial grant that could level the playing field. Despite his grim diagnosis, Curt wanted to ensure that students like his children, like me, still received the help they needed to succeed long after he was gone. I ask that you consider joining me in continuing Curt's legacy of generosity by contributing to the Chandler Grant for Storytelling Fund and the Donald P. Bellisario College of Communications to support the budding success of another promising young visual journalist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. As all of you know, Curt's last months were difficult and painful. And I think it's interesting that he made time for us to talk to him and essentially assuage our grief about what was happening to him. He was patient with us. He gave us his time when he didn't have very much of it left. You're about to be a witness to one of the last of those conversations with one of Curt's great colleagues from the past, Dave LaBelle. After we've shared this, we ask you to join Curt's friends and family, his students, his former students, out in the lobby of the Carnegie Building for some light refreshments. Here again is Curt.
There he is.
Hey, there he is.
Good to see you.
Hey, Curt. You're looking good. So, well, gosh, are you still in the hospital?
I've been out now for almost a month.
Really? Oh, good.
So I got a sort of a bonus 2 or 3 weeks in Phillipsburg I didn't think I was going to have.
Yeah.
So that was nice. You know, give a chance to say goodbye to some people there. And then I went back, I did 1 week chemo.
Yeah.
And I could already tell it was headed the wrong direction.
Well, I can't imagine.
Yeah, so I just said, I'm going to bail on this. And I feel good now. The thing with pancreatic cancer is if you don't catch it right away, and then there's stage 3.5, and then there's stage 4.
Yeah.
And 3.5, clearly can last a long time. And the nice thing about 3.5 is I'm able to still talk to people, reach out. And, I've been just sort of inundated recently with the students finally figured out what was going on. Yeah. And so I've been getting calls from students all over the country. And one of them works in Hershey. She sent me like a brick of Hershey's chocolate.
Like you need that.
I don't know what's going to happen to that. So start giving it away. But people have just been super kind.
Oh gosh, yeah. But you sound like you've resigned yourself to that you're still not going to get better. Have you resigned yourself to that?
What the doctors tell me is that where I'm at is the best I'm going to be. It hasn't been a perfect process, but I think that there's a lot of good people out there, and I've enjoyed meeting them and working with them.
Yeah, and Stacy's got strong backbone. She's not afraid to say what she feels.
No, she's not. And watching Stacy and Molly managing the doctors,
yeah,
was hilarious. I just wanted to pull up the beach chair and watch. Yeah. Say that I couldn't have done this without her would be a total understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been the primary caregiver. She's been running interference on the bills. She found the place that we are. Here I can. No, but actually, one of the most entertaining parts of this whole process is just watching. By watching everybody pitch in whatever way they can to be able to make stuff work.
Well, of
Vince
course.
came by, and he'd never seen any of my pictures before.
Oh, really?
No, he's too young. So, I mean, he'd seen some up on the wall, but so one of the things we did was he brought down my old portfolios from the 80s.
Yeah.
Went through those, but it was really, that was incidental. The fun part was actually spending a whole day looking at pictures together and talking about the stories behind them.
What's so strange, Curt, is like you think of all the stories we've done about people that have had difficult, transitions in life, and now you're one of them, And
yeah, I know.
I'm sure you thought that before.
The irony is not lost on me.
Gosh. Well, the only difference.
On the other hand, it's really interesting to see it from this side. I mean, 2 years ago, probably my biggest fear was I was going to get Alzheimer's, like my mom. It turns out that's the least of my worries.
Oh man,
my brain is still fully functional and active, although my wife might disagree occasionally.
Yeah.
But I could tell that my body's just slowly winding down.
Well, you still have the same positive spirit. If I close my eyes, you don't sound any different than you've ever sounded. But when I open my eyes, I think, boy, his face got a lot thinner.
Yeah.
Well, so how are you staying so positive? I mean, I'll ask you. I'm going to pretend that I'm a person that doesn't know you, and I'm coming to interview you. How do you stay so positive?
Well, part of it is, what's the alternative? In my last days moping around, thinking about, what could have been.
Yeah.
It is interesting. You watch. I remember when you see an athlete and something happens on the field, and all of a sudden that's it. Their career's over, and there's still all these goals that they had set for themselves. And I have a lot more empathy for that now.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, because I had there's all the stuff I wanted to do. There's all the stuff I still want to do, and it's just not going to happen. I wanted to travel with my wife. I wanted to do some study abroad with students.
Yeah.
I have some student projects that are really interesting. I want to spend way more time with my kids, and that just doesn't. I just have to pick and choose now. There's some things I can change, and there's some things I can't.
Yeah.
And the things that I can't change, I'm just not going to sweat it.
So if somebody asks you what your legacy is going to be, what's it going to be, Curt?
I think the legacy is in. There's a family legacy. I have 4 kids that I'm proud of who are spread all over the country doing cool things.
Yeah.
Then I've got a school legacy.
And a photo legacy.
The College of Com is starting a Curt Chandler storytelling grant. Yeah, and people have been super generous.
Yeah.
Those who can be. Bob Lynn chucked a bunch of money into that.
Obviously, you have a love affair with Penn State that we didn't anticipate.
Well, they've given me a lot of opportunities here. They basically never said no. I said, I want to go to Baltimore with 9 students and wander around in dicey neighborhoods and do stories about gentrification for 10 days. And they're going, great, here you go, here's the man. Here's the money. Go do the stories.
So I'm hoping you live at least another 6 months because I'm a slow writer. So.
Well, I'll just stretch it out just for you, okay?
Good. I'm glad. That's what. I mean, you're like one of my best friends, and I just admire you, and I love you, and I'm not even, you know, it's like, what do you say to somebody like this again? I've been through it so many times in my life, but I still feel awkward. I still want to see you, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that those awkward feelings just, you know, speak to your humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can see that there's going to be a moment like that here.
Yeah.
Where people are going to wake up one day and go, you know, everything that they told me wasn't true.
That's right.
It seems to be impossible to do a story that puts things in context.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. All I can say is I'm thankful that we walked the earth the same time.
Me too. Absolutely.
50 years either way, we had missed each other. All right. I think we got cut off.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah. Oh.
All right. I guess the electrons are telling us it's to call it a day here.
I know. All right. Well, I love you, and I thank you, Curt, and I tell Stacy I thank her for being such a wonderful support. Yeah.
I'll do that, and I'll also thank her for editing me on the fly.
Yeah. All right. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you later.
Love you too.
Okay. Bye.
See ya.